All right, guys. Welcome to Unit 4, Part 1, Processing Crime and Incident Scenes. Part 2 will be for the following week of the 30th. So don't worry, I'm only going about 30, 35 slides in of 71. This shouldn't be too heavy, I hope, for this week. But we'll be alive about this. It won't be too crazy. I might have you write something. I'll figure it out. Most of the labs I have to kind of make up for you guys because I don't really have any labs that were given to me. So going based off what we know and all that jazz, or what we learn rather, is how we make labs. And it'll be fun. So here's what we're going to go over in this unit. Explain, here's the objectives. 1 of 2. Explain the rules for controlling digital evidence. Describe how to collect evidence at private sector incident scenes. Explain guidelines for processing law enforcement crime scenes. List the steps in preparing for an evidence search. Describe how to search a computer incident or crime scene. Moving on, there's more objectives. Explain guidelines for seizing digital evidence at the scene. List procedures for sorting digital evidence. Explain how to obtain a digital hash. Review a case to identify requirements and plan your investigation. So see, this makes you think if I'm going to make a lab for you guys on how to get a hash. That's what I'm thinking about right now. So that's something we'll get to when we get to. Don't worry. That'll probably be maybe for the end of this week. I might roll it into next week, depending on how many labs I give you. I don't plan to give you more than 3 to 4 labs a week because this stuff can get pretty heavy and it can get very intrusive and take a lot of time. I know you guys have other classes, you guys have lives. Don't worry, I totally get it. All right. So, part 1 of 2, or sorry, slide 1 of 2 for identifying digital evidence. What is digital evidence? Digital evidence can be any information stored or transmitted in digital form: emails, pictures, text documents, anything you send via the internet, things you share in Facebook groups, for example. That can be a form of digital evidence. U.S. courts accept digital evidence as physical evidence. Digital data is treated as a tangible object. Even though you can't physically touch it, it's technically still evidence. Give me 1 second, guys. My phone is going off. Let me pause it and I'll get right back to you. Okay, back to this. Talk about tangible object because you can treat it as a real object because you can present it technically, even though it's physical. You can print out a picture, you can print out documents. That makes it physical, right? So going back to this, groups such as the Scientific Working Group on Digital Evidence, SWGDE, set standards for recovering, preserving, and examining digital evidence. I didn't like my arrow. Sorry. That was my keyboard. I'm trying to hit next, but I guess I didn't like it. So slide 2 of identifying digital evidence, or 2 of 2. General tasks investigators perform when working with digital evidence. Identify digital information or artifacts that can be used as evidence. You ID it, collect it, preserve it, and document the evidence. Back in the lab, you analyze it, identify it, and organize the evidence. So you categorize everything. This is media, this is relevant, this isn't relevant, this is somewhat relevant, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You would ID what everything is too. You would tag it. That's part of it. Rebuild evidence or repeat a situation to verify that the results can be reproduced reliably. So sometimes a disc, for example, it was like a CD, you smash a DVD, a Blu-ray. What if it's all data that you need? You would piece it back together digitally. You would try to recreate how this damages so you can see if you can achieve the same results. This way you can verify it. That's what it's referring to. Collecting digital devices when processing a criminal or incident scene must be done systematically. There's a method to it, essentially, is what they're saying. So moving on. Understanding rules of evidence, 1 of 7. Consistent practices help verify your work and enhance your credibility. Remember that checklist we talked about maybe a chapter or 2 ago? That's what that comes in. Did you copy this? Did you grab this? Did you label this? Did you tag this? Did you bag this? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Comply with your state's rules for evidence or with the federal rules of evidence. Normally, it's federal supersedes state for evidence, but depending like what level you work in, that's where it's a toss-up at that point. They will tell you though, you're supposed to see the state's evidence rules, except for these situations, federal rule applies, yada yada yada, or vice versa. Federal overrules it, we use federal, but sometimes with these state has to do rules how to handle this. Evidence admitted in a criminal case can be used in a civil suit and vice versa. Yep, as long as it's relevant and applies to both, it can be used either way for criminal or civil. Keep current on the latest rulings and directives on collecting, processing, sorting, and admitting digital evidence. These rules change over time. They will update you on them. They're not just going to have you fly blind the whole time, so don't worry. So slide 2 of 7, for understanding rules of evidence. Data you discover from a forensic examination falls under your state's rules of evidence or the federal. I just said that last slide. Digital evidence is unlike other physical evidence because it can be changed more easily. It can be altered, right? You can alter things in Photoshop. You can alter things in the computer. Plain and simple. The only way to detect the change is to compare the original data with a duplicate. So let's say someone embezzled money, right? And they wrote these checks out, but they took pictures of them, but then changed the amount to less. And this is, well, this is what I deposited. See, then you would compare images if you can find the original images from, let's say, from their phone or on their computer. Like, no, but this is the same check number. This is what you had. Here's what we have versus what you have. No, then you would pull their banking record and show, so you deposited the same amount from here. This doesn't exist. Oh, but they could fight you. But if it says check, let's say 7, and your check 7 matches to what was deposited, that you got them. You know, there's slam dunk. No way around that one, right? Unless you can physically go to the bank and edit it, which I doubt they can do. Another concern when dealing with digital records is the concept of hearsay. Hearsay is a secondhand or indirect evidence. Yeah, the thing with that is, though, almost everything won't be relevant, but everything will be relevant is the thing. This might, this picture might relate to something, but it doesn't. It's kind of what it boils down to. Or this item that you discovered or copied over seems like it belongs there, or it doesn't. You got to learn how to filter things out. So moving on to slide 3 of this, understanding rules of evidence. It can get dicey. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Business record exception allows records of regularly conducted activities, such as business memos, reports, records, or data compilations. That was asked to anything. Sorry. It's making me scratch my head because they don't really give you a whole thing in this thing. Business records are authenticated by verifying that they were created or at or near the time by or informed transmitted by a person with knowledge. So essentially, let me pull this up. Let me end this for a second. Let me stop the share. Let me stop this for 1 second. What you're going to be looking at, let me see. Let me end slideshow. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to think of what I can show you with that. It'd be like this. This is just a payment I did on my house. Don't worry about it. But if you go over here into this folder, this file I have, you can see it. Don't worry. I'm not sharing anything crazy. Here's the people who own it. You would go to these kinds of details. Here's what it tells me. Attributes A, my attributes are blank. Owner, that's the name to my account. This is my computer was made on. These are the things you would be looking at in digital forensics in terms of like, oh, we covered this. Here's when it was made. Here's the date it was created. February of this year at 850, date modified at 850. Here's the size of the file. Does that match to what do you have with the original drive or the clone drive? Yeah, okay, cool. I got them. This is when they made that payment. That makes sense. Added to the roster of items. So I'm gonna go back to the slideshow. That's essentially how business records will be looked at. That's what it means by at nearer time. That's where you would check it in properties. And business records are admissible. If the record was kept in the course of a regular conducted business activity and it was the regular practice of that business activity to make the record, what the hell does that mean? So if it's an accounting item, I keep thinking about accounting because you're always writing things down in accounting in terms of money. So don't you have to jot things down? Yeah, it was created. It's admissible. It's evidence. Computer records are divided into computer generated records and computer stored records. Computer generated records would be like QuickBooks, Access, databases. Computer stored records are scanned items like physical ledgers. I said ledgers that they use in accounting. Like if you use an accounting book, I keep saying accounting because it's pretty relevant. You could scan the picture of it. Okay, cool. This is January's records. I scanned it, it's saved. I put it on the hard drive or flash drive or whatever. I made a copy. That's a computer stored record. Yeah. So moving on. I'll tell you what. Let me go back a slide. That's how I describe it. Give you 5 extra credit points. You can tell me in your own words, and I don't want no chat GPT crap. I'm telling you this right now. In your own words, what does computer generated records mean? And what does computer store record means? In your own words, not mine, not chat GPT's. Don't you dare use chat GPT for this. I will know. Don't ask how. Just please. That's all I ask. 5 extra credit points. You have until the 30th to turn this in at midnight. Do not turn it in the day after. I'm not taking it. Do not turn it in 2 weeks after. I ain't taking it. Just send it to me in Canvas. Anyways, so here you go. Computer generated and computer stored records must be shown to be authentic and trustworthy to be admitted into evidence. They have to line up with the timeline of the crime or whatever happened. Computer generated records are considered authentic if the program that created the output is functioning correctly. So if you can replicate this file by making it with the same program because you cloned the drive, right? Then you can. Usually considered an exception to the hearsay rule. If you can recreate it and it happens again, you're on track. Selecting evidence according to approved steps of evidence control helps ensure that the computer evidence is authentic. There's steps, there's methods to all of this. Don't worry, we'll get into it much later. Sorry, I'm gonna get you because I should. So slide 5 of this. I just covered slide 4. I apologize, I'm not naming them. I blow through this stuff because I'm reading it and I'm explaining it as we go. When attorneys challenge digital evidence, so when they go against it, when the attorney goes no, objection, You've all seen judge shows, right? Often they raise the issue of whether the computer-generated records were altered or damaged. So the way they try to counter it is say, hey, that's not the original image, or hey, that's an altered image, or hey, that's a damaged image. One test to prove that the computer-stored records are authentic is to demonstrate that a specific person created the records. Remember when I went back, I showed you it was created by my user account? That would be me. It would say, Al created this account on this day. That's the person. That is considered metadata, which is the other Microsoft Word document can be identified by using file metadata. That is the metadata I'm talking about. That is the thing. That's the actual physical data. It's the actual relevant data. Following the steps stated on page 150 of the textbook shows how different. Might do that as an exercise. I will think about it. Let me write that down right now. I don't lose my place. Where the hell did I put that marker? Of course, it rolls away, right? So, there it is. It's right in front of me. It could have been a snake or a scorpion. Could have stung me or bit me. Yes, I know snakes don't sting and scorpions don't bite. I just always say stuff backwards, like cross your T's and dot your I's. So let me do slide. We're on slide 10, by the way, if you're curious. Slide 10, chapter 4. So I will look into that and might make that a lab because it shows you how to identify metadata. It's pretty simple. It's again, this is an intro course, guys. I'm trying not to throw the whole kitchen sink at you again. I will repeat that for the next like 5 lectures so you kind of get the groove of how I work. Don't worry, I'm not that harsh of a critic. You guys are in community college. You're trying your best. You guys have lives. I mentioned that because I know I'm going off on tangent, but just hear me out for a few seconds here and we'll get back into it. I sat in that seat you're in. I know what it's like to be like, man, I gotta get all this done. I got a mountain of work. I don't have the motivation. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. But persevere, and you guys will achieve your dreams. I can tell you that for a fact. My original goal was to get my bachelor's and work as a data admin and not talk to people. Then I discovered teaching one day. I got hired to teach for the adult education courses at Santa Ana College. I was about to teach. And they offered me the full-time IT job, and I kind of got stuck working full-time IT, but I actually like being in the classroom. I like interacting, even though we don't really interact. You guys hear me talking like, oh, this guy's a big old mook. But another thing about me, I don't mind sharing with you guys is I don't have thinning hair. That's not the point of this. I spent about 10 years in that chair that you guys are spending maybe 2 years to finish your thing, transfer out to UC Merced or Cal State nearby. I live in Orange County. I'm like 6 hours away from you guys. That's why I'm remote. But I sat in that chair for 10 years. And if you're struggling, talk to me. We can talk about it. Because I've been there. Everyone's like, man, I'm taking these courses. I'm doing okay. I'm not doing okay. It's work doesn't work out for me. If you guys are curious what kind of work you can do part-time, if you're looking for part-time work, let me know. I can point you in a couple directions. I have a couple areas we can check for public work that's part-time. So it's not so heavy. Retail isn't exactly the best friend you could have either when going to school. But anyways, back onto this. We're going back onto my little heartthrob. I just poured my heart out to you guys so you can understand what I'm talking about here. So off we go to the races. On to slide 6. Process of establishing digital evidence is trustworthiness, originated with the written document and the best evidence rule. So this is old school. This is like when forensics first came around. I think of that Johnny Depp movie where he plays not Sherlock. Where he's after it's an old movie, and the reason I think is they talk about evidence a lot. It has some supernatural elements into it. I don't remember the name of it, but it has to do with John the Ripper, and that's when fingerprints were starting to come about. And I think it's in Boston where he's chasing the Ripper, and they're trying to get fingerprints for people, and that's how they kind of show a good scene about the best evidence rule states. I might, if I find that on YouTube, I'll link it in here just out of sheer curiosity and like, oh, see, here's what I'm talking about. So best evidence rule states to provide the context of a written document, record, or photograph originated the original file is required. Ordinarily, sorry. Federal rules of evidence allow a duplicate instead of originals when it is produced by the same impression as the original. In other words, a copy is allowed. That's what it essentially means of the original. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, hubba, hubba. This will be a question on the midterm. I don't know who just said that. Anyways, moving on. As long as bitstream copies of data are created and maintained properly, the copies can be admitted in court, although they aren't considered best evidence. I don't make the rules, guys. I just follow them. Examples of not being able to use original evidence: investigations involving network servers. I'm trying to think why they would say that, but because maybe the files get altered all the time, that would probably be why. Think about it. The thing about network servers, you ever heard me say probably a chapter ago, chapter 4, hands in the cookie jar, a lot of hands in the cookie jar? That's what that's referring to. A lot of people modifying and editing data. So that will do it. Removing the server from the network to acquire evidence data could cause harm to a business or its owner. Yeah, if they, again, I talk about accounting because it's just money relevant and they use servers a lot. I've seen it. That's why I'm saying this. Um, Downtime for them is money. So even, if they have databases, images, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, a picture company would be the same way. They would be like, "Oh, we can't. We need to save our pictures to the server. We can't be closed, et cetera." Who might be innocent bystanders to a crime or civil wrong. Yeah, because it affects more than one person. That's kind of what they're saying. So if one person did something bad, but you can copy things off the server and a lot of people edit it, you can't really add it as evidence that's credible because a lot of people edit it, but a lot of people rely on it. So you can't take the server down for a day or two just to copy things. You literally have to go and get it out and use it as not substantial evidence, but as a piece of evidence to point you to something more concrete from that user. If that user entered line 17, then line 14 was entered by someone named Carol, it wouldn't be relevant. But anything after line 17, you have to find out what program he used. You'd scan his computer, yada yada. This date and time he edited it. You would have to get copies of the server logs and just verify it that way to prove, hey, he did this on the server on this file. I can't present the file, but I can present this that points to the file. That would be admissible. Sorry, I'm going off into how you would go around it. It's just, kind of gotta think. You gotta think outside the box and think around obstacles. That's the thing about technology. You may hit a roadblock with one thing. There's a million different ways to do it. You just figure out how to do it more efficiently for you. That makes sense, and you can prove without shadow of doubt it works. Do it. Okay. Enough of my ramblings on understanding rules of investigation. That was slide 7 of 7. We are not halfway there. Almost there. We got about 23 slides to go till we're halfway there. So should be only about 8 minutes so far. Hopefully you're still with me. If you need to take a break, pause it and look at my weird, ugly mug on the screen and go drink some water, have a snack, come back to when you're ready. All right. So let's talk about collecting evidence in the private sector. This is where a lot of you might wind up working if you want to do forensics. I personally would work public because I like being a government goob. That's what me and my friends call it. Working in the government in the public sector is very rewarding. And I don't mean that in the sense of, we make decent money. We make as much as private, about 20% difference. But the work-life balance is something you guys should look into because I'll tell you this right now. When I'm off work at 4:30 p.m., my phone does not go off. I do not get emails. No one contacts me until the next day if something's needed. That's beautiful. But anyways, private sector organizations include small to medium businesses, large corporations, and non-government organizations, NGOs. So what's a non-government organization? Google, Microsoft, Apple, more corporations. But non-government organizations, RICO, it's a print company, protecting the organization. Conglomerates, organizations that have their hands in a bunch of million things, like Procter and Gamble. There you go, those are good ones. Small and medium businesses, mom and pop shops, or small and medium businesses are like your local fast food guy. If there's like 3 of them in 2 different towns over or whatever, and one there, that's considered a medium business. Non-government organizations must comply with state public disclosure of Federal Freedom of Information Act. That's pretty common. Freedom of Information Act says, hey, this is available. Let me have a copy of it. That's essentially what freedom of information is. And make sure documents available as public records. So literally kind of what I just stated. FOIA allows sorry guys, citizens to request copies of public documents created by the federal agencies. Taxes, you can look at them. Payroll, you can look at it if it's falls under that jurisdiction. So a special category of private sector businesses include ISPs. What does that mean? Internet service providers, other communication companies, Sprint, T-Mobile, cell phone companies, pretty common. ISPs can investigate computer abuse committed by their employees, but not by customers. So yes, that's true. They cannot investigate a customer. But if feds come a knocking, they have to allow them access to their network to search for what you did or looked up, or not you, but as the person, the suspect, that the suspect did while using their network. That's what I'm referring to. I don't think I'm targeting you guys. That's not the point. I use you and the euphemism of that gang, that person. Thing as in, what did they do was the thing. What abuse did they commit? What thing did they target? What thing did they go to? That's what I refer to as thing, not as a tangible object, a physical object, more of a action. Okay, perfect. Except for activities that are deemed to create an emergency situation. There are special powers in place where they deem almost everything's an emergency situation for this kind of thing. Investigation and controlling computer incident scenes in the corporate environment, much easier than in crime scenes. It's a lot more organized. Incident scene is often a workplace. So what do you find on a workplace besides files and cookie snacks on the drawer sometimes and drinks like a coffee machine? It's a lot more sparse versus if this was like law enforcement, you'd be in someone's home, you'd be outside somewhere, stuff would be everywhere. If they had like a spindle, if you know what a spindle is, it's like a stack of CDs. I don't have a spindle on me. They threw it everywhere and they had all their backup data. It's scratched or broken. Yeah, that's what I'm referring to the chaos. More contained workforce. Typical businesses have inventory databases of computer hardware and software. Yes, every business, regardless of private or public, and I'm not referring business and public in terms of like the IRS, I'm referring to like entity like your local court system, your local police department. They all have databases, regardless of that. That tracks all their hardware, that tracks all their software. It helps identify the computer forensic tools needed to analyze a policy violation and the best way to conduct analysis. In other words, to narrow your search down. So let's say, let me think of something here. You're tasked with, there you go, finding out why this person looked at something they weren't supposed to look at. It's the fourth time they've done it. It caused a big incident where you guys caught a virus on the network, and it stems from this man's computer or this person's computer. I mean, man is personal, it's anybody out. Just this person's computer or their assigned computer. Circle 12G because it's 12G in the garbage disposal area because they work in waste management. So you go network scan circle 12G, pull the metadata, and you find out what they did or what they accessed. You interview them, but don't accuse them of, hey, we had an incident, we need to talk to you. Yeah, you talk to their manager above and see if they were acting weird or anything before you even get the feds or violations are involved in HR and all that jazz. Your manager. Keep everybody in the loop, as I mentioned before. Generate your report after you research the data and check what they've done. And you can say, oh, it was an incident. It was isolated in the sense of that they misclicked or they did this through nefarious means because they have been Googling this for the expire. This is how they did it. Only a bonehead would do something like that at work. But accidents happen. For example, I don't know if you've seen this in your Merced emails. You get urgent administrative work up to 500 a day. Click here for that's called technically a spear phishing email. It's targeting technically anybody. Spear phishing is more focused, more against general phishing. But if you click on it, something like this will be generated, and you wouldn't really be in trouble if it's an accident you did by accident. You reset your password. This is just from my side of work. Reset your password and tell you, don't do that again. If it gets to the point where it's you do too much in the year because you're not paying attention, because that's kind of what happens when people click on things most of the time, 99% of the time, you get sent to a retraining for cybersecurity, which is kind of boring. And an hour and a half of your time you don't get back. And you don't get paid for it either. It's not you don't get paid in the sense of growth. You get paid in your regular rate, but you're forced to do this and you can't do anything else. So you get it done. So corporate policy statements about misuse of digital assets allows corporate investigators to conduct covert surveillance with little or no cause. Yeah, but that's something you sign to and agree to. But if you're not doing anything wrong, you're fine. Access computer systems without a warrant. Yeah, because it's internal. You don't need a warrant to investigate an employee if you work there, and it's your job. It's part of your job. They agreed to it when they signed up. So on to the next slide. More about companies. It's still private sector. We got 2 more slides for private sector to go. Companies should display a warning banner and publish a policy stating that they reserve the right to inspect computing assets as well. That's usually something you sign in form of documentation, cybersecurity agreement, or technology agreement. It's in there. Yeah, they will have a pop-up something on the network. The one I showed about the government one a while ago, but it'll say, yeah, Monsanto, Acme Corporation. I use Acme because it's general. Acme General, you agree to this, this, and this, blah, 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 click OK. I guarantee you a lot of people will just click OK and not even read it. Private sector investigators should know under what circumstances they can examine an employee's computer. So they're potentially told these are the only reasons you're allowed to look at their machines. If any of these reasons happen, go ham. That's pretty much what happens. Every organization must have a well-defined process describing what an investigation can be entailed. So it tells you what they can and can't do, and what they can cover, and what they can't research or copy off that person's computer. What if they're hypothetically looking at a sick, following up with a sick relative, and they had to check on them, and that's copied in there. Can't use that against them. That's not really against the law in terms of corporate world, but it's personal. You can segue out of it. That has nothing to do with violation of them, causing a cyber attack or something because they misclicked. That has looking after a loved one remotely versus, you misclicking is 2 different animals. I'm sure the investigator would not be so brutal, like, well, this is what caused it. I highly doubt, you're looking at a remote stream of a loved one or whatever because they're not feeling well that day or what have you, does not cause grounds for termination or write up because you're a human. Anyways, that's kind of what came to my head. I'm thinking about it because there's been cases like that. Can't think of anything specific, but I know it's happened. Okay. So slide 6, if a private sector investigator finds that an employee is committing or has committed a crime, employers can file a criminal complaint with the police. So that's if they intentionally damage their equipment, they delete the folder that had all data they needed to work on something, they intentionally cause mischief or actual computer harm. This is what's referred to as an insider attack. So I'm going to reference something that's in the news or fading out of the news. Remember, I talked about the guy that leaked those recent Pentagon papers. He was disgruntled. He wasn't happy. That's a symptom of an insider attack. I might cover that later if you're curious. We can talk about it. He just acted out and lashed out. That's why he leaked those documents. And that's at that point, police get involved, FBI gets involved, federal government gets involved, the fuzz gets involved. It gets hairy. Employers are usually interested in enforcing company policy, not seeking out prosecution of employees. So it's not that it's not rare. I mean, it'll happen from time to time. If the gravity of the situation is big enough, like if the whole accounting firm's information got leaked and it created unfair competition, that firm went under. Yeah, that's a big, technically fraud and technically, I mean, it's insider trading, but it's really bad, and that will get in. Police will get involved at that point because it's monetary and it's very big. I bring up money because everybody relates to money in one way or another. Like, you gotta make money. We need money for things, right? Goods and services. So, private sector investigations are mainly concerned with protecting company assets. Yeah, that's true. They're meant to protect the company and all of its items. That's what they concern themselves with. So, slide 6 of this. Almost a public. If my mouse wakes up, that would be cool. There we go. Sorry, my mouse goes to sleep. It's Bluetooth. It takes a minute. You discover evidence of a crime during a company pulse investigation. Determine whether the incident meets elements of criminal law. So, did they damage equipment? Did they do this nefariously? Does it meet any of those requirements? Inform management of the incident. You gotta let your bosses know and their boss's boss know. Because CYA, CYB, cover your butt. That's one of the main things you're gonna learn. Stop your investigation to make sure you don't violate the Fourth Amendment. That's gotta know when to draw a line. If it's too much personal information that they leaked, or accounting information they leaked through their personal devices, stop. You don't go beyond that. You don't even go into it. Restrictions on obtaining evidence. You would need search warrants, and the cops would get involved. They would take over. You would turn in what you found. It would be a liaison between them and the company, essentially, and they would inform you what they can and cannot provide you with. Work with the corporate attorney on how to respond to a police request. Yeah, saying the laws involved at that point. So that's kind of dicey. So processing law enforcement crime scenes. Surprisingly, this is only 2 slides, which you figure will be a ton more. You must be familiar with criminal rules of search and seizure. Fourth Amendment. Can't be unfair. You should also understand how a search warrant works and what to do when you process one. Law enforcement officers, may search for and seize criminal evidence only with probable cause. Probable cause is essentially versus the standard. That's essentially what I'm saying here. Specifically, whether a police officer has the right to make an arrest, conduct a personal property search, or obtain a warrant for arrest. So probable cause is the person's being suspicious, the person's being really off, same person, because it's kind of how they look at it. Like if you get pulled over and you're cool, calm, and collected, guarantee you the cops are going to search your car. But if you're being jittery, that's enough to give them probable cause. Like you're jumpy. What are you hiding? That's how they think. So moving on. With probable cause, a police officer can obtain a search warrant from a judge that authorizes the search and seizure of specific evidence related to the criminal complaint. Or they'll ask you, do you have anything on you? You say no, and you lie. That's probable cause if they figure it out. They won't need probable cause at that point, but they kind of prove themselves. Body cams and all that jazz. Or the states that only warrants, particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized, can be issued. That's more like for. I mean, they do need a warrant technically go in your car, but if you're being odd, they will ask your permission to search, and if you don't grant it, they'll need one. I'm not trying to make this a course of law. I'm just trying to figure out. If you say yes normally and they search and find nothing, you're fine. But if you're hiding something, I don't want to get into semantics of that. It's just my brain's trying to figure out how to best describe it, but I think this kind of does a decent job. But it's kind of a gray area. Innocent information. Unrelated information is what it essentially is, often included with the evidence you're trying to recover. This is talking about warrants. Okay, I guess. Judges often issue a limited phrase to the warrant, allows the police to create instant information from evidence. So if they found something incriminating on somebody, I'm not saying anybody in particular, um, on their computer, they would say it was found in this file. That's what that would refer to. Like if they found some items they're not supposed to have. Let's just put it that way. And it's located in the hard drive under C, documents, that's innocent information. That's kind of phrasing. That's what I'm referring to. So moving on to slide 2 of terms used in warrants. Plain view doctrine. Objects fall in plain view of an officer who has the right to be in position to have that view are subjected to seizure without a warrant and may be introduced into the evidence. So if an officer walks by and you're in a calf or a person, you keep saying you as in terms of just trying to visualize it. You're in a cyber cafe or Starbucks and you look up something unintentional that they can see, they can seize it without needing warrant. That's essentially what that means. The criteria must be officers where he or she has a legal right to be. Cops can take them be anywhere, right? Ordinary senses must not be enhanced by advanced technology anyway, so they can't use like Google glasses, binocs. Like they gotta see with their own eyes. Any discovery must be by chance, so it just happens to be that they walk by. So they give an example, I believe. The next phrase. The plain view's doctrine of applicability in digital forensics world is being rejected, though. Why? I don't know why. We're about to find out why, though. In a case where police were searching a computer for forensic evidence to illegal drug trafficking. Okay, so if an examiner observes an AVI file and finds child pornography, he must get an additional warrant or an expansion of the existing warrant to continue searching for child pornography because that's unrelated to the case. That's why they're kind of ditching that. That's why they're saying they would need an additional warrant. So they could be, searching for emails or where they got drugs, but for some reason there's a video file, an AVI file that has child pornography on it. Well, yes, that is against the law. They would need an additional search warrant to continue looking for more of that. That makes sense. So they can tack it on or expand it. Depending on the judge, they'll usually approve it or grant a secondary warrant where they would then search for child pornography, which I don't want to get into. It's messy in the sense of that's just dumb. That's obviously it's wrong. That's why it's against the law. Duh. Moving on. Oops, give me slides. So, preparing for a search, preparing for a computer search and seizure, probably the most important step in digital investigations. To perform these tasks, you might need to get answers from the victim and an informant. This is dealing with law. This is dealing with police, who could be a police detective assigned to the case. So you would talk to them. A law enforcement witness. You would talk to them. So what did you see, etc. So you'll have an idea of what you're looking for. You talk to both of them or one of them, depending on this, or a manager, a coworker, or the person of interest. It just depends on the severity of the case and what you're dealing with. And they would tell you, oh, I saw them doing this. They did this in the file that shouldn't be there, or they were looking at inappropriate things that constitute federal indictment with child pornography or whatever. I think they looked at this date. So you would go through the history for that date and what they looked at, and blah, 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 blah. That's what you would deal with when talking to these people. If it's a police detective, it'll be a little more straightforward. Like, here's what we have on them. Here are the dates we found out about them. If you talk to a witness, they may be a little shook up, but they should be able to give you the info if they're right. They'll tell you around with this time. They'll give you less of a specific window. They'll give you a window of time that they saw this, the 5th and 8th of the month, versus a detective might have more of it was between 7th and 8th. Narrow it down even more. Or a coworker, I saw like 2 weeks ago, a week ago, things like that. Or a person themselves like, I was looking things up on the internet. I was just on there like most of the time last month. So you search a monthly history or whatever. So almost there, guys. 10 more slides. Moving on to the nature of the case. Identifying the nature of the case. When you're assigned a digital investigation, you can start by identifying the nature of the case, include whether it involves the private or public sector. So if you get a case assigned to you and you're dealing with a criminal, it's most likely going to be you're in the public sector. Or is it? Depending on the crime they committed, it could be against a private individual or private entity. So that's what they're referring to. I just say you might be working public. I say public. The nature of the case dictates how you proceed and what types of assets or resources you need to use in the investigation. So yeah, depending on what you're dealing with, you kind of figure out what you're going to use to put all this together. Give me 1 second, guys. I have a notification I need to check out, so let me pause this and I'll get right back to you. Okay, guys, back into it. So we talked about the nature of the case dictates how you'll proceed. So going on to the next slide here. This is what I was referring to when I meant public sector, law enforcement. The type of OS or digital device. For law enforcement, the step might be difficult because the crime scene isn't controlled. Crime scenes are chaotic, believe it or not. They're not exactly neat affairs. Most crime scenes are sporadic and all over the place. And, well, absolute chaos. It's crime scene investigation's job, first and foremost, to kind of organize it before you kind of get there. But you work in tandem with them if you work for a police force. And no, I have not done that, but it's just that's how it is. You work together and they tag, oh, digital evidence is this, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You can look in that area, look around, whatever, and just don't move anything. You can identify the OS or device, estimate the size of the drive, the suspect's computer, and how many devices to process the scene. That's more for flash drives, but in terms of processing, but I'm talking more about, well, they're talking more about rather. They have 3 computers. You're taking them all because you don't know what they did on what. It's your job to figure it out. During which OS and hardware are involved. You won't know once you turn it on. You're going to do that back in the lab. You ain't doing it there. So if it's rigged to melt, you inspect it physically. You wouldn't just hook everything up without looking at it physically, right? Or would you? Think about it. What makes sense? Would you just hook it up, turn it on, and pray it turns on and works fine? Or would you look at it first and be like, well, you just take a make sure everything's great, then turn it on? Because what if they wired something? You don't know that. It's just, I'm not talking like a bomb, just they wired it wrong, just the fire happens. Then what? You lose the data? You don't want that. So it's just something to think about. That's, out there. The types of cases, locations of the evidence. The type of case and location of the evidence, sorry. During whether you can remove digital evidence. If you take the whole machine with you, yeah, I think you'll be fine. There's a training whether you can seize computers and digital evidence. Because see, when it comes to business, that's where it gets a little hairy if you're working law enforcement and like a big white collar crime where they stole money. It's either you can or can't remove the machine. If it's going to be used by somebody else the next day, you can't. You have to copy it on the spot. So that's where you would take a mobile lab with a laptop and everything else. Law enforcement investigators need a warrant to remove computers from crime scene. Yeah, you got to. You have to. You have to have a warrant. You can't just up and go. But you can take flash drives. No one's going to tell you that. It's probable cause. It could sort of here. That's what I'm referring to. If removing the computers or irreparably harming business, the computer should not be taken off site. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. If it's used for day to day, if there was a clerk machine, it's the only one they have up front. You can't take it. You got to clone it there live with a warrant. You can't just do it because of probable cause. It gets really weird. I know. So slide 2 of determining whether you can seize a computer for digital evidence or in digital devices. And digital complications: files stored off-site that are accessed remotely. Yeah, how do you deal with that? Availability of cloud storage which can't be located physically, stored on drives where data from their scribes might be stored. That's where just too many hands in the cookie jar. If you are allowed to take computers to your lab, determine the resources you need to acquire digital evidence and which tools can speed data acquisition. So that's what I'm referring to. You copy data on site. You might tell them, hey, you know what? I can't take this with me. I understand that, but I need to copy this. I have a warrant for it. I need X amount of time, and they have to give you that X amount of time. That's where you determine which tools you're using and for how long you'll be there. It'll be a day sometimes, depending on the amount of data. Imagine if it's RAID, it'd be 3 days. So, I'm not trying to scare you, but this is just real world things you may run into. So, getting a detailed description of the location. Get as much information as you can about the location of digital crime. You're going to find out where you're going. You're going to find out what they did. You're going to find out where the crime took place. That's where you will be. Identify potential hazards. Interact with your hazmat team, hazardous material team. They'll tell you hazmat guidelines. Put the target device in special hazmat bags. You can be anti-tag bags. Hazmat technicians can decontaminate the bag. Check for high temperatures because high temperatures damages data. Determining who's in charge. Almost there, guys. 5 more slides. Private sector computer investigators usually require only one person to respond to this. It's usually one man show. Technically 2-man show sometimes. Just depends how big the organization is. Law enforcement agencies handle larger scale investigations. A lot of people's business. You're assigned to one area, you're assigned to another, you're assigned to this, you're supporting him, you're supporting them, you're supporting her, blah, blah, blah. So there's the leading investigators when there are scale investigations. That's where you or somebody else would be leading into, hey, I need you and you and you. You handle this in this area, you handle that in the area with me. Here are the warrants, get to it. Anyone assigned to the scene should cooperate with the designated leader to ensure the team addresses all details when conducting the device. Evidence, my mistake. Using additional technical expertise. Determine whether you need specialized help to process the incident or crime scene. You may need to look for specialists in operating systems, RAID servers, and databases. You're going to rely on other people because, let's face it, not everybody knows everything, right? So let's say you have to recover stuff from a database, but it's configured in a way you've never seen. You would talk to a database expert. Hey, have you seen this? Have you dealt with this? You might have them on payroll. You might have them on call. Consulting, essentially, is what it is. Finding the right person can be a challenge. Yeah, things are done really weird sometimes. Educate specialists in investigation techniques, prevent damaging Prevent evidence damage. Yeah, but well, long story short, um, you all work on the same kind of workflow, so you guys will know how to tag and back things if you're working as part of an organization or government. They'll train you. It's not just going blind. Government entity, sorry. Training and tools you need. We will only get through about up to slide 3 of 5 of this, and we'll pick up the rest from there in the part 2, which I'll record at a later date, so don't worry. Preparing tools using incident and crime scene information. Create an initial response field kit. Should be lightweight, easy to transport. Basic things you're going to take with you. Create an extensive response field kit when you get bigger messes. Include all tools you can afford to take to the field, like a big tool bag full of tools. What else can I think of? Anti-static wipes. You might need to wipe something. Gems, tweezers. Gems are plastic things you can use to pop things out, pop things in. When at the scene you extract only those items, you need to acquire evidence. Here's an example of a kit on the next page. Digital forensics kit. It's really basic and small. A laptop computer can be somewhat of a mobile station to look things up. Digital camera to take pictures, and a flashlight in case you need light. Here's a table of stuff. So this is slide 3. This is as far as I'm going to go for right now, which is slide 34. We'll pick up the rest in part 2. But here's part 1 of the table. Wow. Let me cover the next slide so you guys get the whole table actually. So I'll go to slide 35. Tools and initial response field kit. So in the basic, your initial like get out there bag. Small computer toolkit, like an iFixit kit. Large capacity drive, terabytes. Huge terabytes, 3 terabyte SSD or whatever. 4 terabyte, 8 terabyte, whatever. Enough to back up anything practically into the sun at that point. It's a personal computer. So Japanese industrial standard screwdrivers. Yeah, you could use that. So ANSI screwdrivers. It's a different bit kind. That's a different sizing. So that's why you would need those in case you run into it. Anti-static wristbands, yeah, in case this way you don't fry anything. ID ribbon cables, yeah, you might have 1 or 2 in your bag. SATA cables, yeah, you would want to add an M.2 enclosure in there or an eSATA enclosure also, in case you run into those. Forensics boot media containing an acquisition utility. So this will be CDs, DVDs, or flash drives with Linux, Windows FE Lite, Kali Linux. I'm thinking this off my head. You would have those there. Laptop ID 40-pin adapter, other cables. That's just yeah, I guess that's like for older hard drives. Laptop or tablet computer, yeah, you're gonna need personally laptop. Don't take a tablet. It's gonna be kind of limited. Just have a working laptop, like a workhorse laptop for that kind of thing. Firewire or USB dual write protection external bay, yeah, you would have that. Flashlight, which I mentioned earlier in the initial kit, you would have an extra one. This is the other part of the table. And continued. Digital camera with external batteries, a 35mm camera flash. Film cameras are kind of going away. It's more expensive to film on this digital. You would have a digital camera or a specific digital phone. You'd have a phone that's made only for this and be kept on there for that reason. No one else touches it. Evidence log forms, you need about 10 of them. You would probably carry 20 of them because misprints happen. You would do it differently. The notebook or digital dictation recorder, a notebook to take notes, or you would have one of those if you've seen like police dramas and stuff that have a digital recorder. They talk about, I'm seeing and walking in, I found this on the right. That's what you would have that for. Computer evidence bags, anti-static bags, 10 of them, carry 20 of them. Always double what you carry in terms of bags. Because experience is a cruel teacher. Let's put it that way. Evidence labels, tapes, and tags, 20, carry about 30. Permanent ink marker, carry about 4 or 5 of them in case you try to try. USB or portable hard drive, 10, 20 of them, just 15 of them. Okay, guys, that's it for part 1 of this. I will see you guys in part 2. Take care and have a good one.